Hello, Internet, and welcome to the Free-to-Play cast, brought to you by MMOBomb.com, your home for all things free-to-play related. This is episode 130. Today we're going to talk about BioWare, PC Master Races, and a whole lot more. That ought to start things off, right? PC Master Race. You always win when you say that one. But joining me to talk about free-to-play news, your favorite writer, Mr. Jason Winter. How are you?
If PCs are the master race, what does that make consoles?
The
serfs, the scrubs,
yeah,
the peasants?
The peasants. Okay. The plebeians, as it were.
We got the consoles working in the mines while the PCs are, sitting on their thrones eating caviar.
Exactly. Something like that.
Just shove some caviar right into your PC, right into the flash drive.
Now, since we're going to be talking about Star Wars The Old Republic, Brim was going to join us today. However, he got called into work, so maybe next week.
This
Brim,
is work.
Yeah, this... not his work. So... yeah, Brim was going to join us maybe next week. Sajero's still on the docket to join us as well. So stay tuned if you're looking for some of the previous hosts to come on back in and cycle through and say hi to all of you. But let's get started here. News. All right, so a free-to-play game, very near and dear to my heart, in good ways and bad.
Your black, cruel, twisted heart.
Yeah, it's a love, hate, hate, love, hate thing going on. But BioWare's free-to-play Star Wars The Old Republic was set to partner with ESL, the Electronics Sports League, for what that's worth. Jason, you wrote an article on that not too long ago. They weren't moving exactly into the competitive arena as far as what you would normally think, like maybe taking Hutball into the arena or some other PvP into the arena. They were going to take timed speed runs of raids, which I'm all in favor of. To me, that's one of those things that's like, hey, you know what? I might have a shot there. Right now, obviously, no. I don't have the group put together and disciplined and knows the content in and out to do it. But to me, it's like I could put together a group and eventually we could be competitive. So I kind of like that whole idea. However, from launch, raids haven't always historically worked very well in Star Wars The Old Republic.
Any game.
Well, yeah, in any game, but particularly in Star Wars The Old Republic. I mean, there's still SOA bugs on the initial raid. So, I don't know. But initially I thought, oh, this is good news. Let's talk a minute before we get into what happened, though, about why it wasn't PvP that moved into this area. And if you don't read what Larry Everett writes over at Massively OP on the Hyperspace Beacon, and you're a fan of Star Wars The Old Republic, you really should. He's a diehard fan in and out with great perspective and isn't afraid to call BioWare or the game out if need be, and he does so in a piece about this specific topic in a really, really compelling and interesting way. So check it out. It's linked on our article on the website. But what do you think was the initial thing here? Like, it seems like they should have taken PvP in, right? And then didn't. What happened?
Because it looks like they just keep having issues with PvP time after time. Whether it's the first time they've had the whatever it was, Ilum was that planet with all the open PvP.
Oh God, open world PvP. Yeesh.
Ugh. And then they put in look at Larry's right up here because I've been following all this stuff all that great. Talking about having 4v4 death matches where there were just all sorts of class imbalances and all sorts of other issues. So they tried doing PvP a lot, and they have it, and they've fixed a fair amount of it to the point where it's still kind of fun. But they probably didn't feel confident enough to take that into a full competitive, ranking, cash prizes, all that sort of really important stuff. So they probably just decided they should go with a different take on that, with what they do well, which is PvE.
Right, and honestly, all of their open world attempts at PvP have just been abysmal. I mean, every single one, from Ilum to current day, they just haven't been good. And then, on top of that, their ranked PvP changed to kind of force people into ranked PvP play that they weren't interested in playing. So with the 4v4, 8v8 stuff, they cannot get this one right. And to me, right off the bat, Hutball was great. Hotball was fantastic.
Everybody loves
And it was just capture the flag where you could, move the flag and toss it around and give it to somebody else. But in the leveling experience, it was a lot of fun. Once you hit 50, though, it was kind of a mess.
Yeah, well, that's how it always was with any PvP zone, because you're feeling pretty good because you're getting up level and so on, and then you get in there, and then the end game gear is just so much more powerful than just about everything else that you get in as a fresh 50 and you're just going to get hosed time and time again when you start out.
Now, if you're into more of the hardcore competitive side of things, although you may not have been super pumped that BioWare's first foray with Star Wars The Old Republic into the ESL was going to be timed raids, it probably gave you a little bit of hope on, okay, now maybe they take the next step and fix something or introduce something PvP-wise that makes sense to also put into ESL gameplay. So this kind of had big news written all over it. This could be a step in a direction that Old Republic players have wanted for a while.
And it's one step forward, two steps back.
Exactly. Because what happened? Well, they took to the forums to announce that they were canceling the entire thing. They weren't going to do it.
And it was only like a week ago they announced this too, so like a week and a half, I guess.
Yeah, that they announced it, and then it was 2 days ago from this recording that they canceled it. And the message comes from Eric Muskov, the community manager, and it's very short, so I'll just read it to you. It says, "Hey folks, I'll cut right to the chase. We're canceling our ESL Operation Victory competition. Our reason revolves around the Koratani encounter. I know many of you raised concerns about the issues related to the encounter, and we agree. We spent a lot of time this week testing bug fixes to see how viable the fixed version would be in a speed-running environment. We've applied improvements to the Koratani encounter as of tomorrow's patch," which went in yesterday, as of this recording, "but there are still situations that could impact players focused on a timed run. We thank you for your feedback around the contest, and should we decide to do something like this in the future, we will let you know. Also, let us know your feedback on the concept of doing a speedrun contest. As we explore options like this in the future, it would be great to know your thoughts." Wow.
Yeah.
It's never good when... my footage paused here on a loading screen, of all things. It's never good when...
It's interrupting your speed run.
Right. It's never good when you have to back out of something because of bugs in your own game that you can't resolve. Now, to be fair, the bug that they're talking about here, and Larry Everett, again, go read his stuff. Big fan of his, and love doing Twemo and other shows with him, the Old Republic podcast, all that stuff. Good guy. He details the specific bug that caused the problem, and it doesn't have to do so much with the encounter itself. Yes, the encounter can be bugged, but it's unlikely. But more with a door. A door, of all things. A door to the encounter sometimes spawns and sometimes doesn't. And if it doesn't spawn, you can just run in and immediately take on the boss. If it does spawn, you're subjected to a cutscene, which, yes, you can spacebar and skip, but in a timed run, that's time off the clock. The other team that didn't get the door to spawn didn't have to put onto their timer. I mean, this seems like such a small thing, right?
And it's almost funny that we talk about how good BioWare and SWTOR is with story. Now that's like their calling card, how good there is, and yet it's a story bit that's screwing this up. If they didn't have cutscenes,
right. I mean, I like how with the latest expansion, Shadow of Revan, it seemed like, okay, look, we're gonna go back to what we arguably do best, and that's tell story.
Yeah, that's definitely the impression I got when I visited them back in November.
Yeah, and playing through much of the expansion, that's exactly what it does. There is a refocus on telling the story. And so I'm okay with like this raid, this Operation Victory, and you know what? This is what we do well, so let's take it to the competitive environment. I'm okay with that, and I like it as a first step into, potentially maybe we fix our frickin' PvP at some point and take that into the competitive environment. But to me, this should not have been announced, period, until it was a done deal.
Yeah, not until they knew that for sure they'd be able to do it. And I said something like this a couple weeks ago in an article that I wrote where I talked about H1Z1 and how they had all this big marketing push for when it was going to go into early access. They had this whole schedule of people who were going to stream. They even asked me when I was going to stream for MoBomb. Yeah, they had all this stuff ready and like, yeah, this is going to be great. We're going to have early access. It's going to be all this stuff, everything going on. Hey, you know how the first day or two of early access went for that.
Yeah.
The game was virtually unplayable, unreachable by anybody. So all this marketing effort and all this stuff that they had that went into it was worth nothing practically. And you get the feeling that it's almost the same thing here, that the marketing department maybe decided we're going to have this big announcement. It's going to be huge. It's going to be awesome. Hey, did anybody check with the developers to make sure the thing works? It's going to be huge. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. Let's get an announcement out there. Get people hyped up. And it just gives me that same kind of feeling where they just didn't. They didn't. On some level, yeah. Again, looks like with H1Z1, they figure it's going to happen. We're going to be fine. But I almost think the default now for MMO companies, especially even for like a lot of other AAA games, we see this all the time. The default maybe shouldn't be. Let's assume the game will be fine when it launches. Right? I mean,
yeah, unfortunately.
It sounds cynical, it sounds sad, but I think that's kind of what you have to go with now. You can't, or you have to be extremely careful about having some big event push or something like that to go with new content. Although I guess this isn't really new, is it? Raid's been around for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, the two raids that they were talking about putting into, or at least were going to be in this initial run, were the Ravagers and the Temple of Sacrifice. Eric Musco, it was last week, introduced BioWare's partnership with ESL in a contest called Operation Victory. The competition was to allow groups of 8 to run through the story mode versions of Shadow of Revan operations, Ravagers and Temple of Sacrifice as fast as they could, and submit their times.
So did they not know that this was an issue before they did this announcement?
Well, they definitely knew it was an issue, but and this is what I'm struggling with. As far as gameplay, if you and I are sitting there playing Star Wars: The Old Republic, this is more annoying than anything. It doesn't,
costs, like you said, 5 seconds or something.
Yeah, it doesn't hinder our ability to complete the story mode and move forward and kill the boss and get the gear and all that stuff. So from a gameplay perspective, yes, they were aware of it. But yes, it's when you start talking about timed runs of anything, anything that adds even 1 second to a team that's trying to cut milliseconds off of their time by doing certain things or not doing certain things, anything that adds even 1 to 3 seconds is a big deal. And it's just, how does that, to me, that reflects terribly on BioWare, that you had this thing, you were going to go do it, and you can't because of a bug in your own game that you knew about and you can't fix.
In fact, I'm looking at Eric's announcement of the whole thing, and the second comment says the Ravagers is still bugged on Corotani.
Yeah.
Some random fan is saying this. Again, it's kind of like what I say, is that some PR guys are saying, let's get this all out, make sure we have this huge thing, without checking with the people who actually play the game, whether that be people in the house or the player council or whatever they have.
For a game that's doing as well as it is financially, I'm stunned all the time.
I mean, we go back to the free to play originally, and that's like, yeah, whatever. And then you have this. We talk about all the other PvP things. But yeah, I mean, I'm just
stunned
the
by move after move after move in the BioWare camp with this game.
The force is strong,
and it just keeps going. I mean, it's just like I've never heard really, really, really good news. Besides the expansion announcement, I guess. You just never hear, oh, well, Star Wars is going to do this. Oh, that's really cool. And anytime you talk about, like on this show or on the site or anything, anytime you write up or talk about Star Wars: The Old Republic, and it's going to be in the comments for this show, is that what a horrible free-to-play model it is. And I would agree for the most part that I think it's a pretty bad free-to-play model, because when I decide I'm on a Star Wars: The Old Republic bent and I want to play it, there is no other option for me besides I resub. I don't even think about it. If I'm going to play it, I resub. And to me, that's kind of a terrible free-to-play model, especially for somebody that actually is somewhat invested in the game, right? And has level-capped characters, etc., etc.
I don't know. I wrote an article about this a couple weeks ago about Guild Wars 2, and I sort of said, guys, maybe, just maybe. It sounds awful, and I think I tried to sugarcoat it a little more than this, but I kind of said, maybe all the griping and bitching we do just doesn't matter. That we're the small, 20% of people who are going to get on forums and light everything on fire when something goes wrong. And the vast number of people are just like, I got a guy with a lightsaber, this is cool, I'm going to keep playing. It's like I almost wonder if that's it.
I don't know. I don't know. But man, BioWare just keep tripping over. Somebody tied BioWare's shoelaces together. I don't know how else to explain it. I mean, they
But
just
even something like this too. I mean, granted, like you said, normal people like you are going to be into it and are going to be like, hey, yeah, I can maybe do this sort of thing. But this probably still appealed to a rather small percentage of their population. So if that smallish percentage, who all are going to get on the forums and scream their heads off about it, if that smallish percentage is put off by this, eh.
right, but you're also talking about, through the partnership, getting your product in front of people that maybe potentially
Sure.
aren't playing it right now. So it is advertising in its own right.
Sure.
And now you can't even do that and you have to publicly come out and say, hey, we can't do it because we just can't fix the damn door. Ay, 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 ay. When it rains, it pours. All right, enough SWTOR bashing. Let's move on. Storybricks. If you don't know who Storybricks is, Mr. Winter's going to catch you up because he got a chance way back when at SOE Live to find out exactly what they were doing here. But Storybricks is closing. And this comes pretty much right on the heels of the announcements that Columbus Nova was dropping Storybricks from the EQ Next development team. So catch us up real quick for those that don't know, who the hell is Storybricks and what were they doing? How were they involved in EverQuest Next?
Storybricks was a development company that was doing some work on EverQuest Next, mainly regarding the AI. Like they were going to have very, very interesting, almost like a more living, breathing kind of AI for EverQuest Next, and how NPCs, both on the lower level, how NPCs responded to characters as they went by, and how, one of the things they used to talk about was how, what was it like the orcs would, and I guess, yeah, not only on how they would respond to you when you went by, like they might bow to you if you had a good title or something like that, but also in the larger sense of it, in terms of how they would kind of take over parts of the map. Like kobolds would set up a camp somewhere because there might be, gold deposits nearby, and if they were left unmolested, they would spread out over more parts of the map. Might put them into conflict with some dark elves somewhere else. They would kind of fight it out. Players could be called in and get reputation with one side or the other. So really, I almost equate it to something like PlanetSide 2, where you have the three factions fighting over control of the map. Only this is going to, or it still probably is going to be, all sorts of different factions, NPC factions. Some of them are getting wiped out as the game goes along. New stuff popping up, big events happening because some other thing happens. Sounded like it was going to be a really interesting kind of thing for them to have in EverQuest Next, really unlike what a lot of MMOs do. And now, they're not a part of the project anymore. And
that was announced about a week and a half ago, ish.
But it's interesting now to see that the whole company itself is just going away.
Yeah, just totally gone. So from the official announcement on Storybricks' website, which is very sad. I mean, it's just very sad. The journey we took exactly 5 years ago to change artificial intelligence in games has come to an end. We tried our best, the world changed a bit, and now it's our turn to take a bow and move on. Storybricks is closing down. It was our decision, and Sony Online Entertainment, now Daybreak Games, bears no fault for it, they're saying. So it's just, well, it kind of makes sense. I mean, when you sever that contract, all of a sudden there's no income. What are you going to do? You gotta close up shop. Sony Online Entertainment had been up for sale for a long time, so our exit had no connection to the actual Columbus Nova acquisition. So this wasn't Columbus getting rid of Storybricks and closing them down. It was, more...
This had been in the works for some time.
For some time, yeah. Here's what's interesting about this that I did not know, okay? I don't think anybody knew this until it was in their announcement. And this is a quote. "Make no mistake, the company needed cuts badly, and we would have cut and cut deeply." So they already knew they were in their own little peril, right? Possibly as deep as Columbus Nova did, but maybe we would have cut more senior management and less game developers instead, and try and retain, I guess, maybe that small indie feel, if anything. Here's the interesting part. It was our intention to try and acquire the 38 Studios assets and make them available to players in EverQuest Next. Moreover, we would have probably changed the server infrastructure, allowing people to run their own servers. It would not have been a very canonical.
Hey.
Wouldn't have been part of the canon for EverQuest, but we would have done the best to service our customers with the limited budget of an independent studio who wanted to punch above its weight. What do you think of that? The 38 Studios Amalur assets.
I'm so over Kings of Amalur and 38 Studios. That was something that was something that was just hyped up to the moon and back, without anything to really show for it, just because it had some fancy names attached to it. So I was never a 38 Studios fanboy. I thought it could be interesting, some of the stuff they were talking about, but yeah, I don't look at this as going, hey, that amazing. It's interesting from a trivia standpoint, in the notion that that stuff was still going to live on apparently in some way, but.
Yeah, and they don't say exactly which assets, so we don't know if it's from the MMO or if it's just some other miscellaneous assets. But looking at 38 Studios MMO and EverQuest Next, I don't possibly see how those assets could have been used inside the art style, unless you're talking about framework and intelligence assets and not art assets. They obviously don't break that down. They just lump it under assets and call it a day.
I don't recall what it is now, but there was one thing about the Amalur MMO or whatever that they talked about once, about being something along the lines of Storybricks, like having some unusual kind of AI-ish kind of stuff going. So that might be what they're talking about, more about code and about procedure than about, character styles or anything, art or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to refer to maybe, like, if it is the MMO, the Project Copernicus AI assets and things like that. But then to also say, hey, by the way, we were also thinking of rebuilding infrastructure and giving Jason Winter the ability to make his own EverQuest Next server.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds almost like, it almost sounds more like what. Well, I guess Landmark has their own servers, but it does sound almost like having your own Minecraft setup.
Exactly.
Because EverQuest Next, along with Landmark, using that same kind of technology, is going to allow you to build whatever kind of weird stuff you want. So it'd almost be like being able to have your own, like I said, your own Minecraft server, but with probably have to have maybe a little of your own ability to program your own AI. So almost like the Foundry from Neverwinter games, but on steroids, like for the whole world instead of just doing a dungeon instance or something like that. And that does sound like it could have been pretty cool.
So Storybricks was actually for sale, too. They didn't just close down. They were trying to find somebody else to buy the tech that they had worked on, but they just couldn't find an agreement. And they mention here that Brian Green is working on Camelot Unchained, and some other people in the team are moving on to other projects. So hopefully all of these ladies and gentlemen find jobs quickly. Now, most of the work they did was EQ Next related, and all that is co-owned by Daybreak. So tough
or now just owned, I suppose.
Well, yeah, now it's just owned. But they do mention that there's a few side projects and a demo that they plan to release for free, and they're totally unrelated to EQ Next. Nothing major, but there may be some Storybricks tech can live on in other games. So that's going to be interesting to see what else they may have been working on. It seems like, to me, though, this type of studio, they were beholden to EQ Next. And if that didn't pan out, they had no other option. So I guess shutting down is all they can do at that point.
Yeah, I mean...
Sad to see them go.
Yeah, I mean, because they really were doing something that seemed pretty interesting and unlike what a lot of MMOs do. And I mean, I suppose they could say that, yeah, it's co-owned by Daybreak, and now they're obviously going to send their guys to work on it. But it gives me a little... With all the other stuff that's been going on with Daybreak, with SOE, with the layoffs and whatever, and the sale and so on, I was still feeling pretty positive about EverQuest Next. But hearing Storybricks not be a part of it and now just being shut down entirely gives me a little bit more of a worry than I had about the project than any of the other news that had come up before.
I think it's funny that they mention this. There's so much politics in all this. Of course, I mean, we're not hearing but 10% of the story. Right. It's so. I find it fascinating though. If you haven't read the letter, it's linked in Jason's article, so go check it out. Because it's very interesting, and right before we got on here, we found another kind of interesting story, and maybe we should talk about that one a little bit too, in conjunction with this, of things going on the backside of stuff aren't exactly ever really what you think. Like this initial letter says, hey, the Columbus Nova wasn't to blame, Sony wasn't to blame, we just had to close, blah, blah, blah. It was our decision. But then they add a PS to the end of the letter. And if you read the PS, it's like, well, wait a minute, were Sony and Columbus Nova really to blame here? The PS is, there's one more story to tell before we part ways. We fell in love with the EverQuest franchise, and we wanted the best possible future for it. We knew Sony Online, 300-plus employees, was for sale, so Storybricks, barely 10 people, tried to actually buy out the whole division. Flabbergasted by that. We retained an investment banking firm as a proxy, and they went directly to Sony corporate, bypassing local executives. We would have been able to raise the necessary capital and had interviewed new and existing management ready for a turnover. So Storybricks was actually in talks to buy Sony Online Entertainment. Alas, it was not meant to be, as the terms offered by Sony Japan were unacceptable to us and our investors. It is my understanding that other buyers had the same reaction, and in the end, Columbus Nova got a completely different deal than the one we were offered, but by then our investor group had moved on. Just amazing. Like, if that's true, wow. Wow.
And you wonder then, why did Columbus Nova get a different deal? You almost hate to say that because somebody at Columbus Nova knows somebody at Sony and offered them a little something different, so that would seem to be, or maybe they just got all those different deals or all the different offers from Storybricks and the other investors they talk about, and realized that maybe we're a little overplaying their hand, and then kind of had to scramble a bit to find someone that they could sell it to for a little cheaper. I don't know.
Before we move on to our last topic today, I kind of like this whole backroom discussion stuff. Your game just had a very, very public backroom discussion, Lord of the Rings Online.
So that's why I'm sort of
okay.
Hold you back a bit.
We'll hold back on it, and you can
right.
you can have extended time during the bomb.
Okay.
Because you're not going to be able to cover it in 30 seconds.
No.
All right, so last up to date before we get to that then, PC Master Race, I don't know, maybe. Some investment firms and data collecting places that we've never heard of are saying that, nope, PCs are going to be, they're going to be the place to play your games, at least until the end of this decade. And you can have free-to-play games and esports to thank for that, right?
That's what's coming out of some numbers brought up by a couple different companies called, what were they? Open Gaming Alliance and DFC Intelligence, which sound very important. But yeah, the numbers they came up with are basically that PC gaming is currently at about, what's the number there? Currently about 19 million, or no, sorry, that's the console, about 26 million or so, and they expect it to grow to about 35 million by the end of the decade, as you said. Really, they're staying ahead. They have them staying ahead. They have consoles kind of going up and then going down a bit. They have phone and tablet games, mobile, all that stuff. Still going up high as you'd expect, but not quite matching PC, which is still a little bit surprising. What some people have had to say about PC gaming, that it's dying. Everyone's going to mobile, or the new consoles have been out just recently, so that's where everyone's going. So it's interesting to see at least one set of projections saying otherwise, saying that PC gaming is doing fine, and in fact still just growing.
Yeah, I find it kind of fascinating, and I'm going to show the chart here. There you go, so you guys can see what we're talking about here. I find it kind of fascinating, though, that even up through 2019, they're projecting phones and tablets to still be behind PC. I have a hard time swallowing that number. Consoles and PC, back and forth. I mean, consoles ahead in 2009, 2010, 2011, and then PC catching up. And okay, fine, yeah, it's always going to be a war between those guys. But phones and tablets as a gaming software, and we're talking about revenue here. We're not talking about number of users. Otherwise, tablets would just be off the charts compared to...
Sure.
Phones and tablets would be off the charts. We're talking about revenue, but still, I have a hard time believing that phones and tablets will not exceed PC revenue by 2019. That one's hard for me to swallow.
Well, the one thing I can kind of see in terms of, yeah, you're right, in terms of that, it might be that there are going to be a lot more games coming out and more stuff that's going to grab people's money. But I can kind of see an argument that says we've almost reached the point of saturation in terms of people. Like in terms of people who know about or have or play games on mobile. Like just about almost everybody who's ever going to probably does now, for the most part. Whereas they're, especially when they talk about in the article and they talk about in their analysis, with PC gaming, there's still a lot of people who haven't tried that yet. There's still a lot of room for growth there, and some of those are coming from people who, got their start, playing Bejeweled or Candy Crush, and now they want to look for something more. So maybe they go to PCs. And there's also talk about how the esports phenomenon, that sort of thing, and getting people into free to play is also going to introduce a lot more people to PC gaming. So I can see some argument on that level why PC gaming would continue to increase, even somewhat outpacing mobile stuff. But I do kind of agree with you that it seems a little odd that it would still stay above, that PC gaming would still stay above mobile gaming that long.
You heard it with these guys first, PC Master Race, I guess. At least until 2019, according to Open Gaming Alliance and DFC Intelligence. Do you think they have badges? DFC.
They don't need to stink.
Oh, I was hoping you'd say it. I was hoping you'd go there. All right, let's move over to the weekly bombs. Oh, thank you for picking that one up. All right, I'm going to go first since yours is going to be a little longer. I have two. I have an A-bomb. Chaos Heroes Online, closed down. Yet another MOBA bites the dust. If you bought area points, they've all been refunded, and yay, you can use them in any other area game. On the plus side of things, I will give a very surprising dub bomb to Magicka Wizard Wars. That was what I streamed this Monday for Bomb Live, and I had a lot of fun. It's definitely a game that takes some getting used to as far as combinations and counters and what you should use here and when and beam and spray and AoE. So it's a little daunting to get into at first, but it's a lot of fun. The one gripe that I will give it is I don't like the cash shop. When we were reviewing it on the stream, some of the pricing was what I thought to be a little on the expensive side for certain things. Yes, there's stat modifiers. Somebody in chat during the stream pointed out that, yes, you're going to buy that robe and it's going to add to fire, but then it's going to take away power on water, so it's more of a customization thing than a true stat thing. And I get that. I wasn't a fan of the cash shop in general and the way you acquired and what you could buy with in-game currency versus what you flat out had to use cash for. So a little bit unhappy with the cash shop, but it was surprisingly fun, even though I'm not a huge PvP guy. I did enjoy it, and I won a duel and then won a few matches. So all in all, good time. So I'll give a dub bomb to Magicka Wizard Wars for this week.
The real question is, how often did you blow up your teammates?
Pretty often. Yeah, pretty often. I sprayed fire all over them. But then, I'd give them the cursory dousing of water.
Sure, so they get hit by lightning.
Right, exactly. You're up, sir.
I'm going to give an A-bomb primarily, and you've built this up for so long now, but it's not going to be that long, because I could go on for probably like 2 hours talking about this. I'm still just kind of reading it over. Giving an A-bomb kind of to myself for the fact that I was going to find a D-bomb or an A-bomb, like over the last half hour before we were getting ready to do this show. But then I got sucked into this rabbit hole of a series of posts made by a former Turbine employee, basically going into everything that's gone on in the game over the past, well, for the time he was working there, for about the first few years that it was out, and just pretty much, I don't want to go with disgruntled employee ripping everyone to shreds, but putting a lot of criticism out there of stuff that's gone on about various people, about various choices that were made, the WB sale, the free-to-play switch, all sorts of different stuff. He also worked for ZeniMax for a little while and takes a few jabs at Elder Scrolls Online along the way. I'm going to have some sort of...
Now, he did point out that he wasn't disgruntled. He actually enjoyed working there for the most part.
He actually says right here, I am not a disgruntled employee looking to hurt Turbine. I loved Turbine for those years and still feel a lot of affection for many I met there. So, that's what he says.
So what's the big deal? How bad is what's going on behind the scenes? Because everybody, at least, when you look at MMO websites, they tend to look at Lord of the Rings Online, maybe not as a huge, critically and financially successful, but a good example of a free-to-play conversion done right, for the most part. That's
eroded away a bit since it started out, but yeah. Basically, well, one of the things he says is that he thought because DDO did so well that the Lotro free-to-play, did well from a relative standpoint, and that it was almost dying off, so they had to do something. But he said that then that the free-to-play came a little sooner than everybody expected. One of the things he mentions is that very briefly was mentioned that they would cancel lifetime subscriptions when it went free-to-play because they didn't have to keep them anymore because there was no sub. But that was shouted down very quickly. But the fact that it was just considered is just one of those things. I mean, I'll have some write-up of this on the site, just covering the major points. There's like
You never really know what's going on behind the scenes, man.
there's thousands of words here, and I'm still reading through and having to analyze all of it. But
He did take a dig at Infinite Crisis too,
yeah, he definitely.
and it's one that didn't surprise me at all.
It took a lot of resources from Lotro.
Yeah, and said it's hemorrhaging money, which doesn't surprise me at all.
Hemorrhaging money, total failure.
Yeah, it does not surprise me at all. So you're going to write this up and kind of give us the bullets?
Pretty much. That's about all I can do. Maybe I'll have like some really long posts a few days from now or whatever. But yeah.
Awesome. All right, so from the viewers this week, your bombs, also your questions. If you have questions for Jason or I or any of the other hosts, be game related, doesn't have to be, whatever. You want to ask us a question, throw it in there. We'll take it in the bomb section here. That sounds terrible. Oh, Brim would be proud of me for that one. Terranova667 says, okay, I'm going to give an A-bomb to Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn.
Oh, no.
Not because I think it's a bad game, far from it. It's because I've been playing for the free 14-day trial, and it's so damn good it's getting hard to resist subbing for it once the trial is over, and I don't really have time to sink into a sub-based game and get the most from it. I guess I have to give an A-bomb to time as well.
A-bomb to time. Who needs time?
Screw time. You're up.
This comes from Valthier. Black Desert has added more to the cash shop since the first week. So this is talking about the $2 million in the first week thing we talked about last week. So Black Desert has added more to the cash shop since the first week, so maybe more people spent money on the cash shop later on. Especially the cats, the cats, like I thought he was talking like people, but actually like cats, I guess. Especially the cats that were released, which pick up items for you. I bet they're very popular. Plus, there were some sales promotions later on, so I'm curious to know what something like last week's revenue was like, or even the past month's revenue. I wish game companies released numbers more often, but oh well. I just hope Black Desert is successful in the long run.
Don't we all wish they released numbers a little more often?
The traded ones, like apparently they are, that like Dom is. I guess we might hear more from them later on. So.
Yeah, because they have to.
Yeah, just like the NCSoft stuff I did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. You know, maybe it's made more, maybe it's made less. I would be very interested in those numbers too, because if it's making less now that there's being more implemented, then it kind of goes with our theory of your audience capped at the beginning. And there were people that commented on the YouTube video, and rightfully so, saying that, you know, with a free-to-play game, something to consider is that your audience may not be there on day one because it is free to play. That maybe your audience waits a little longer to see reviews and gameplay and things like that. And that's certainly a valid point too, and one we really didn't delve into as much. I don't think that number is as big as some people think it is. I still think that your first week or two is going to be the biggest audience you have right off the bat, and that's going to taper down before it picks up, like most games do, but it's certainly a consideration. Just Sumi says, well, and this is on Black Desert as well, free-to-play doesn't have an immediate jump in sales. It takes a few weeks to months for people to actually spend money on the cash shop. Nobody jumps right in and throws money at the game. I think it's an impressive number for Black Desert, especially if you consider that South Korea isn't really that big to begin with. I guess we'll have to wait and see if it gets bigger, especially in Europe and the Americas. And that's certainly a valid point. Is that
I don't know if I'd say nobody jumps right in and throws money at the game.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think they meant literally nobody, Jason.
Well, yeah, I know not literally nobody, but there seems like there's enough people who, like in the first week, or yeah, you and I who are cautious and play a bunch of stuff, but some people are just like, Black Desert is the greatest thing ever. Must spend $100 now. You know, so.
Did you buy your, speaking of shelling out money, did you buy your Skyforge Founders Pack?
No.
I thought that was your new game!
Not quite yet.
Go ahead, sir.
I know a guy.
Yeah, we know a guy.
We know a guy.
I bought mine, actually, speaking of guy, and we're talking about Spunkify, community manager over for Skyforge and former editor here, still does a first look occasionally. We know a guy, so we were going to see, you know, hey, are you going to be supplying press passes or anything like that? I went ahead, Jason, and I decided I'm excited enough about your product
Oh.
that I did buy the $69.99 Founders Pack. I shelled out the money for it, and then Spunkify and I talked the following day, and I said, hey, I shelled out the money for it, just as a support thing. And he's like, oh, we were going to work on getting press kits for you guys and everything. And I said, I know, you were going to do that, but I felt like I should shell out the money, because I'm looking forward to Skyforge. I don't know if it's going to be something I'm going to sink hours and hours and hours and hours and hours into yet, but I am looking forward, so I did my part to show support.
Because I'm sure you wouldn't have ever found anything in the cash shop to buy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely not.
No.
Go ahead, sir.
All right, this comes from V2099. He says, a huge A-bomb to the Chinese New Year. Imagine Thanksgiving, but a week long minus the football. With visiting family and friends, I have to share my bandwidth with everyone and couldn't play all my MMOs. Again, screw time. A-bomb to time.
A-bomb to time. That's the theme. UDK Fazy, my da-bomb for the week is World of Tanks, for getting serious about improving the game again and working on new physics engine and new PvE game modes. You're a World of Tanks guy.
A little bit. Haven't played a whole lot lately.
You dabble. You dabble in the tanks. Question of the week last week, and we got some interesting responses on this one. Would you be upset if a key component of a project you backed on Kickstarter changed after you made your donation? Why or why not? And Terranova667, who chimed in with a bomb, says, question of the week, no, I wouldn't be upset, because if you go into a Kickstarter thinking you're backing a game, you're not. You're donating to the idea behind it and hoping that it turns into something. Ideas can change and often do. Just look at the whole issue with Peter Molyneux and Goddess as a prime example of a Kickstarter that had ever-changing goalposts and ideas that still haven't been resolved. Just be thankful that a Kickstarter game ships at all, because some never see the light of day, and then you really have completely wasted your money. You're not happy on the Goddess front, too.
I'm not happy with Kickstarter in general.
Yeah.
I'll buy something when it's out.
And some people were kind of unhappy with the views we expressed on the whole Kickstarter thing. I thought I was kind of on my side. I was like, I don't know. I don't.
Well, you say you've actually backed things.
I've backed things. Yeah, I mean, not a lot. Maybe 10 different projects, and maybe 4 or 5 were actually video game related. The others were various, movies or things like that.
Porn.
Yeah, that's what I do. I go to Kickstarter to back my porn. But yeah, yes, I think you have a right to be upset, absolutely, because you're putting money into it. But I don't know. I just think there's that line that it's too hard to segregate when the line has been crossed, is my point. I don't know. Go ahead.
All right, this comes from Giorgio Berardi. I love your name, Giorgio. All right.
I think you say that every time I put Giorgio in the comments.
Giorgio says, I would be really upset with the developers because many times a key component of a game could be the main or only reason that a person has donated to the project. Imagine a Kickstarter project that fulfills all the criteria of the game of your dreams. It has a reasonable price. It has all the features you ever wanted in a game. The graphic style is awesome, and you say, I'm totally donating. But then a couple weeks later, the developers tell you they're changing some aspects of the game, turning it on a more profitable and cheaper project. They changed some aspects you think were the reason you donated. They showed all the cool things to attract donators, and when they were satisfied with the money, they removed or changed some as a, in parentheses, scumbag marketing strategy. Wouldn't you feel betrayed? And that's always the question when something like this changes. Is it because they were trying to bait and switch you? Or is it because it's a legitimate thing and they have to do, or realize it's not going to work this way, or something like that? So you never know. Again, all this behind-the-scene politics stuff, you never know exactly what's going on.
I think
unless Turbine employee spills it all.
I think in the general sense, I'm just not happy with Kickstarter and fundraising sites as video game development. And there's one comment that I wanted to bring up here. Sniper Walrus, and we've heard that name before. Sniper Walrus was pretty critical. Said the video that ended my love-hate relationship with MMO Bomb. It's the bullshit mentality that allows for devs to get away with pretty much anything that has turned pre-orders and Kickstarters into the abominations they are now. And I kind of disagree there. I don't think either one of us really used it as or advertised it as it's fine, they can do whatever they want. In fact, on my side at least, far from it. If you're not on Kickstarter and you're a Daybreak Games or whatever, you better deliver what you say you're going to deliver. It's not okay for you to be changing things like that, very late in the game. And I don't like Kickstarter and crowdfunding as video game stuff because of all the constant changes and no accountability for those changes. So, Sniper Walrus, value the opinion. I think maybe I wasn't clear on how I was expressing my view, because I certainly wasn't using it as making it okay for devs to do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, and I said, from a legal standpoint, I think it's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to deal with it. If you put money into Kickstarter, that's what you're going to have to deal with. But you got the right to be upset, but there's nothing you can do about it. Don't spend your money that way then.
Frelm says question.
I would say in general, don't get so overhyped on something that you're willing to throw money at nothing. Would just be the.
Frelm says question of the week. Nope, because I wouldn't back anything at Kickstarter. The soul of Kickstarter is awesome. Good point. But it's even bigger pitfall than early access, pre-purchases, and alpha beta buy-ins. Unless I get some guarantee that my money is being used towards what was advertised, I can't say I'd ever be comfortable with simply giving handouts. Sorry if I sound like a downer, but trust is on an all-time low with the gaming industry. And that's a totally fair point. I go into anything that I've ever backed on any of those sites, I go into knowing this may not ever see the light of day, and they just took $50, and I'm never going to get it back, whether I get a product or not. It might see the light of day, it
might be something you hate.
Yeah, so. And I'm not a fan of Kickstarter and crowdsourcing as a whole. Yes, I like what it does for small indie developers, but now we see bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger people getting onto it to avoid having a publisher or be beholden to somebody, and yeah. Frelms, I think, summed it up better than I ever could. That's a great sentence. Great sentences. Question of the week this week: Star Wars Online, or Star Wars, Jesus, Star Trek Online. No, they're not the same. Memorialized Leonard Nimoy in game. I know, right? Memorialized Leonard Nimoy in game, which fantastic. So sad to hear of his passing. I want to know, Mr. Winter, who. They can be real or fictional. Would you like to see memorialized in your favorite MMO, and why? So they could be because they died. I don't care why. They could still be living. They could be totally fictional. Whatever.
Well, clearly I should have a statue to myself in every game I play.
It'd be called the dubious player.
Yeah, but actually interesting that for all the Lord of the Rings Online that I played, I don't see, and I guess it's hard to do. It's hard to get through the lore or whatever. There's no official. I don't know. There's anything that officially references Professor Tolkien himself. Might be neat to have some sort of little thing in that somewhere.
Mr. Jason Winter, where can everybody follow you, sir?
Follow me on the Twitter at WinterInformal. Watch me stream twitch.tv/JasonWinter. Follow the strange words I talk about, not only on MoBomb, but also on my blog, jasonwinter.wordpress.com.
I'm Mike Byrne, a.k.a. Magicman. You can follow me on Twitter at Magicman1, MAGICKMANN1, the spelling that drives Jason Winter up the wall. Of course, you can follow me at MMOBomb.com. I hope you'll come over, check out the articles, all the great giveaways, and stay tuned to all the latest news in the free-to-play world. Until next time, gang, stay safe, and we'll see you on the servers.